Welcome, everyone. Thank you for standing by. All participants are in a listen-only mode today. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. We will have a question-answer session towards the end of the call, and if you have a question, please put your question into the chat box. It is my pleasure to turn the call over to Sylvia Lopez-Gallona. You may now begin, ma'am.
Hello and welcome to the CDFI Equitable Recovery Program application webinar. I'm Sylvia Lopez-Gallona, Associate Program Manager of the CDFI ERP, and I'm joined today by the CDFI ERP program team.
Hello, my name is Latasha Banks, and I am the Senior Portfolio Manager for the CDFI ERP.
And hello, my name is Erin Kelly, and I'm the Management and Program Analyst for the CDFI ERP.
Today, we will be covering about the CDFI Fund, FY 2022 CDFI ERP Overview, preparing your application, completing the application submission, review, and selection process, uses of award reporting and reminders. Note, capitalized terms not defined herein shall have the meaning specified in the CDFI Equitable Recovery Program Notice of Funds Availability, known as the NOFA. The CDFI's mission is to expand economic opportunity for underserved people and communities by supporting the growth and capacity of a national network of community development lenders, investors, and financial service providers. The vision of the CDFI Fund is an America in which all people and communities have access to the investment capital and financial services they need to prosper. The CDFI Fund supports investments in low-income communities through assistance programs, bank enterprise award programs, capital magnet funds, CDFI bond guarantee programs, community development, financial institutions programs, Native Initiatives and Native American CDFI assistant programs, New Markets tax credit program, small dollar loan program, economic mobility corps, CDFI rapid response programs, and CDFI Equitable Recovery Program.
We'll now review the agenda item FY 2022 CDFI ERP Overview. The Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021, Section 523 of Division N, Public Law Number 116 to 260, provided $1.75 billion in supplemental appropriations to remain available until expended for the Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, or CDFI Fund, to provide grants to CDFIs to respond to the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Awards will be made to CDFIs to expand lending, grant-making, and investment activity in low or moderate income communities and to borrowers, including minorities, that have significant unmet capital or financial services needs and were disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and to enable CDFIs to build organizational capacity and acquire technology, staff, and other tools necessary to accomplish the activities under a CDFI ERP award. Eligibility for CDFI ERP awards. Organizations eligible to apply for a CDFI ERP award are Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs, that are certified as CDFIs by the CDFI Fund as of the date of the CDFI ERP Notice of Funds Availability, or NOFA, is published in the Federal Register, or on June 24, 2022. Have at least 30% of their average annual financial products closed and grants made in its 5 most recent historic fiscal years, both in terms of dollar volume and number of transactions, in ERP-eligible geographies. Meet the criteria outlined in Table 3 of the NOFA, are in compliance with all outstanding CDFI fund awards, allocations, or CDFI bond guarantee program requirements, and meet benchmarks for programmatic and financial safety and soundness and minimum thresholds of financial health and financial capacity, as evidenced by at least 2 years of audited financial statements. Please note, affiliated CDFIs, as defined in the NOFA, may not apply separately under the CDFI ERP. Only one affiliate must be selected to apply. ERP eligible geographies. The above image is an excerpt from the CDFI Fund Information Mapping System, or SIMS, database, which displays the Washington, D.C. metro area. The areas highlighted in green are ERP eligible census tracts. Information is available in SIMS for the entire United States and U.S. territories and can be searched by address and census tract. CDFI ERP Overview Award Information. Award Form. All awards will be in the form of a grant. Award amount. Minimum $500,000. Maximum $15 million, or 3 times the applicant's average on-balance sheet financial products closed in its 5 most recent historic fiscal years, whichever is less. If 3 times the average on-balance sheet financial products closed in its 5 most recent historic fiscal years is less than $500,000, the maximum award an organization is eligible to request is a $500,000 award. All applicants must deploy their full award amount during the 5-year period of performance.
CDFI ERP Overview Eligible Activities. Applicants must use an award only for the following eligible activities. The 6 eligible financial products and services categories includes financial products for all institution types, financial services for regulated institutions only, development services for all institution types, grants for all institution types, loan loss reserves for all institution types, capital reserves for regulated institutions only. The 7 eligible operational support categories include compensation, personal services, compensation fringe benefits, professional service costs, travel costs, training and education costs, equipment, and supplies. Award limitations. There are limitations on what portion of the CDFI ERP award may be used for certain categories of eligible activities. For any award size, no more than 25% of the award amount may be used for financial services and development services combined. A recipient may use up to the greater of $166,667 or 15% of the award amount, not to exceed $400,000, for eligible activities in all operational support categories combined. Recipients must use 90% of award dollars for activities in ERP-eligible geographies. Any funds deployed outside of ERP-eligible geographies must serve low or moderate income persons or businesses disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that are included in CDFI-eligible markets. Eligible lines of business. The award may be used for the following lines of business: commercial real estate, small businesses, micro-enterprise, community facilities, affordable housing, consumer financial products, consumer financial services, commercial financial products, commercial financial services, intermediary lending to nonprofits and CDFIs, and other lines of business as deemed appropriate by the CDFI Fund. Here are the critical deadlines for applicants. The last day to enter EIN and UEI numbers in AMIS is July 26, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time through AMIS. The last day to submit SF-424 mandatory application for federal assistance is July 26, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time through grants.gov. The last day to contact CDFI Fund with questions about CDFI ERP is August 19th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time through a service request via AMIS, which is preferred, or through an email to erp@cdfi.treas.gov. The last day to contact CDFI Fund with questions about compliance or CDFI certification is August 19th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time via a service request through AMIS, which is preferred, or by email to ccme@cdfi.treas.gov, or by phone 202-653-0423. The last day to contact AMIS IT Help Desk regarding AMIS technical problems only is August 23rd, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, with a service request via AMIS, which is preferred, or by email to amis@cdfi.treas.gov, or by phone to 202-653-0422. And finally, the last day to submit CDFI ERP applications is August 23rd, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time through AMIS.
Preparing your application. Application process overview. Pre-application includes SAM.gov, grants.gov, AMIS account, UEI and EIN. Application components, SF424, grants.gov, AMIS application in AMIS, and attachments in AMIS. Review. Step 1, eligibility. Step 2, financial analysis and compliance risk evaluation. Step 3, application evaluation and initial funding recommendations. Step 4, award amount determination. Please note, applicants should review all application materials on the CDFI ERP website as they become available. Getting started. First, read the CDFI Equitable Recovery Program NOPA. Second, register and or update your accounts in the following systems: System of Award Management, SAM.gov, grants.gov, AMIS. And third, download and familiarize yourself with the application materials found on the CDFI ERP website. SAM.gov, System for Award Management. Existing SAM.gov users should ensure that their account is active and up to date. The CDFI Fund will not consider an application from an organization that fails to register or activate its SAM.gov account, and as a result is unable to submit its SF424 through grants.gov. I have it validated by grants.gov by July 26, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The CDFI Fund does not maintain SAM.gov. Contact the Federal Service Desk at 1-866-606-8220 for technical assistance, or visit www.fsd.gov. UEI and EIN. Ensure that the name CDFI ERP applicant has a current and valid unique entity identifier, known as UEI. Ensure that the name CDFI ERP applicant has a current and valid employer identification number, EIN. Ensure that the applicant's UEI number and EIN number are entered accurately in grants.gov and AMIS. Applications submitted with the UEI and EIN of a parent or affiliate organization will be rejected. Applicants are encouraged to start the process now and well before the application due date. Grants.gov. Only the SF424 will be submitted via grants.gov. All applicants must submit their SF-424 through grants.gov and have it validated by July 26, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time under the Funding Opportunity Number CDFI 2022 ERP. Note, if the applicant does not submit a valid SF-424 through grants.gov by the deadline listed in the CDFI ERP NOFA, the applicant will be unable to submit materials in AMIS and the application will be deemed ineligible. New grants.gov users should complete the registration process as soon as possible. If the amount requested on the SF-424 is different from the amount an applicant requests in his application submitted via AMIS, the CDFI fund will only consider the amount requested in the application submitted in AMIS. The CDFI fund does not maintain grants.gov. Contact grants.gov at 1-800-518-4726 or email support@grants.gov for technical assistance. Awards Management Information System, AMIS. Other than the SF-424, each applicant must submit all other required application materials via AMIS. Additionally, applicants must enter their EIN and UEI number in AMIS by July 26, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. An applicant is required to designate at least one authorized representative and point of contact in its AMIS account. Authorized representatives cannot be a consultant or other contractor. The contacts, POC, and AR must also be identified as active in AMIS. An applicant that fails to properly register and update its AMIS account may miss important communication from the CDFI funds and may not be able to successfully submit an application. Applicants should review Table 4 of the CDFI ERP NOFA for a list of required application documents that must be submitted via AMIS. AMIS will validate that an applicant has provided each required application document prior to the submission of the application. Applicants should allow for sufficient time to review and complete all required application documents, confirm all attachments are being included with the correct documents, and remedy any validation issues prior to the application deadline. Upon submission, the application will be locked in AMIS and cannot be resubmitted, edited, or modified in any way.
Completing the application. CDFI ERP Pre-Application Eligibility Questionnaire. Prior to launching a CDFI ERP application, you will be required to complete the CDFI ERP Pre-Application Eligibility Questionnaire. 1. Attest that at least 30% of your average annual financial products closed and grants made in your 5 most recent historic fiscal years, both in terms of dollar volume and number of transactions, were in ERP-eligible geographies. And 2, attest that you have audited financial statements for your 2 most recent historic fiscal years. Historic refers to the applicant's most recently completed fiscal years for which it has prepared audited financial statements. Please see the NOFA for additional information. Required application sections in AMIS: applicant eligibility, organization and application information, Part 1, business strategy, Part 2, community impact, Part 3, organization capacity, appendices, and attachments. Applicant eligibility. This section includes applicant eligibility data table and applicant eligibility criteria. Please note the requested information will substantiate the attestations made in the pre-application eligibility questionnaire. Tips for completing the applicant eligibility data table. To complete the applicant eligibility data table, you will need to determine which of your transactions made in your 5 most recent historic fiscal years were located in ERP-eligible geographies. The term ERP eligible geographies is defined in the FY 2022 CDFI ERP NOFA. View the list of ERP eligible geographies on the CDFI Funds website at www.cdfifund.gov/ERP. View the ERP eligible geographies by clicking on the ERP button on the CDFI Fund Information Mapping System, or SIMS, page of the CDFI Funds website at www.cdfifund.gov/CIMS3. Utilize the Applicant Eligibility Worksheet in the CDFI ERP Data Inputs Excel Workbook, available on the CDFI Funds website at www.cdfifund.gov/ERP to gather all required eligibility data offline before entering it into AMIS. In addition to the census tracts list on the CDFI Funds website, all native areas are also ERP eligible geographies. As native areas often cross census tract boundaries, those geographies are not covered by the Excel file on the CDFI ERP page, but they are available in SIMS. Applicants can determine whether an individual address is located in an ERP eligible geography by using the ERP page in SIMS. If applicants need to determine census tract numbers for a large volume of addresses, they can use the bulk address geocoding tool in AMIS, which is located under the TLR Import-Export Certified page. The CDFI Fund will release additional guidance on using this bulk geocoding functionality on the website soon. After using the bulk address geocoding tool to determine census tracts associated with certain addresses, applicants will need to cross-reference these census tracts with the ERP eligible geographies Excel file on the CDFI ERP website. The bulk geocoder only determines census tracts for addresses. It can't be used to determine if specific addresses are located in native areas. Organization and application information. This section includes application questions numbers 1 through 6 and one related appendix. Question 1, organization information. Question 2, award request. Question 3, accountability and financing track record to minority individuals and minority communities. Question 4, application contacts. Question 5, total estimated hours to complete the application. And question 6, executive summary. Appendix 1, accountability and financing track record to minority individuals and minority communities, which includes Table A, board and executive staff information, and Table B, financing activity. Tips for completing the organization and application information section. Information collected is mostly administrative in nature. Responses to questions in this section do not affect the scoring or evaluation of your application. Question 3 and Appendix 1 collect data necessary for reporting to Congress on the nature of CDFIs applying for and receiving awards under the program. It does not impact application scoring or evaluation in any way. Utilize the Table B worksheet in the CDFI ERP Data Inputs Excel Workbook, available on the CDFI Funds website, to gather all required data offline before entering it into AMIS.
Part 1, Business Strategy. This section includes application questions 7 through 10 and one related appendix. Question 7 is assessment of the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Question 8 is eligible activities. Question 9 is implementation plan. Question 10 is projected performance. Appendix 2 is CDFI ERP projected performance, where you will find Table C, CDFI ERP projected performance table. Tips for completing the business strategy section. Information requested relates to your planned use of a CDFI ERP award, primarily in the form of narrative responses. Responses to questions in this section will be scored. Read each question carefully. Ensure your narrative response addresses all parts of the question. As appropriate and available, provide quantitative and qualitative data to support your responses. To have a favorable evaluation, you must articulate a strong, coherent strategy for using a CDFI ERP award to address the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the needs of the populations and geographies you intend to serve. Part 2, Community Impact. This section includes application questions 11 through 13 and one related appendix. Question 11 is track record of responding to community needs. Question 12 is CDFI ERP policy priorities. Question 13 is outcomes, tracking, and reporting. Appendix 3 is community impact tables, where you will find Table D, CDFI ERP track record tables, and Table D, projected increase in activities in ERP eligible geographies. Tips for completing the community impact section. Information requested relates to your historic and projected community impacts and is requested in the form of checkbox selections, data inputs, and short narrative responses. Responses to questions in this section will be scored. Utilize the Table D worksheet in the CDFI ERP Data Inputs Excel workbook available on the CDFI Funds website to gather the 5 years of required track record data offline before entering it into AMIS. Select only one of the 5 possible CDFI ERP policy priorities. If you do not select a policy priority, or if you attempt to select more than one policy priority, you will receive an error message in AMIS and will not be able to submit your application. If you are selected to receive an award, the policy priority you select will become a condition of your assistance agreement in the form of a performance goal. Table E will appear in your AMIS application only if you select the policy priority to increase lending in ERP geographies. Part 3, Organization Capacity. This section includes application questions 14 through 16 and 4 related appendices. Question 14 is Key Personnel. Question 15 is Previous Awards. And question 16 is Financial Information and Compliance Risk Evaluation. Appendix 4 is Key Personnel. Appendix 5 is Previous CDFI Fund Awards. Appendix 6 is Application Financial Data Inputs. And Appendix 7 is Compliance Evaluation Questions. Tips for completing the Organization Capacity section. Information requested relates to your organizational capacity to carry out your proposed activities under a CDFI ERP award. Responses to questions in this section will be scored. If you plan to expand your staff in order to support your implementation plan, attach a prospective organizational chart that reflects the increased staffing necessary to accomplish the projected level of activities outlined in your application. Utilize the Application Financial Data Inputs Excel workbook available on the CDFI Funds website to gather all required financial data offline before entering it into Appendix 6 in AMIS. Forms and Certification. Appendix 8, Forms and Certifications, contains the Environmental Review Form, Assurances and Certifications, and the 501c4 questionnaire if applicable. Required attachments to the application. The required attachments include audited financial statements for the applicant's 2 most recent historic fiscal years, which is applicable to loan funds, venture capital funds, and other non-regulated institutions. The management letter for the applicant's most recent historic fiscal year, or a statement in lieu of management letter, see Table 4, of the fiscal year 2022 ERP NOVA for a full description, is required of loan funds, venture capital funds, and other non-regulated institutions. The current year-to-date, 3/31/2022, unaudited financial statements is required of loan funds, venture capital funds, and other non-regulated institutions. Year-end call reports for applicants' 3 most recent historic fiscal years prior to the publication date of the fiscal year 2022 ERP NOFA. For additional guidance, please see the FAQ, is required of regulated institutions. A current organizational chart outlining the applicant's structure and staffing, as well as an updated prospective organizational chart if the applicant plans to add staff resources to accomplish the activities under a CDFI ERP award, is applicable to all applicants. Note, financial statements should only be for the CDFI applicant. If applicant's financial statements are consolidated with other entities, also attach the unconsolidated versions or note where in the audit the unconsolidated financials are located.
Application submission, review, and selection process. Application submission. The CDFI fund has a 2-step process that requires the submission of application documents on separate deadlines in different online systems. Step 1, on or before July 26, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The applicant must submit its SF-424 via grants.gov and enter its EIN and UEI numbers in its AMIS account. Step 2, the applicant must submit a completed CDFI ERP application in AMIS, including all required application documents on or before August 23, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. CDFI ERP application review process. Step 1, eligibility review. The CDFI fund ensures that each applicant meets all eligibility requirements as detailed in the CDFI ERP NOFA. Step 2, financial analysis and compliance risk evaluation. Financial analysis evaluation. The CDFI fund evaluates non-regulated applicants using an internal tool called the Application Assessment Tool, AAT, that rates applicants from 1, highest score, to 5, lowest score. Non-regulated applicants that score a 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the financial analysis evaluation will move on to Step 3. Non-regulated applicants that receive a confirmed total financial composite score of 5 will not advance to Step 3. The financial analysis evaluation for regulated institutions will be based upon regulator feedback and CAMEL scores, or regulating entity equivalent. Applicants must have a CAMEL's rating of at least 4 and or no significant material concerns from the regulator. Compliance risk evaluation. The AAT also rates the applicant's level of compliance risk based on responses provided in the application, as well as the applicant's reporting history, reporting capacity, and performance risk with respect to the CDFI fund's PG&M. Applications that score a 1, 2, or 3 from the compliance risk evaluation will move on to Step 3. Applications that score a confirmed 4 or 5 will be deemed a high compliance risk and will not advance to Step 3.
Step 3, application evaluation and initial funding recommendation. Evaluation will be conducted by 1 external non-federal reviewer and 1 internal CDFI fund or other federal government reviewer. The external reviewer will review and score the applications based on criteria outlined in the CDFI ERP NOFA and will provide a recommendation as to whether the application should be forwarded to Step 4 for an award determination. The federal reviewer will conduct quality control for the external reviewer's evaluation and be responsible for scoring of the application, will provide a recommendation as to whether the application should be forwarded to Step 4 for an award determination, and will recommend a preliminary award amount. The recommendation on whether an application should be forwarded to Step 4 is based on whether an application achieves minimal standards for clarity and consistency of business strategy, clear and eligible use of funding, and organizational capacity to deploy at least a minimum award amount during the period of performance. This recommendation will not be the result of the Step 3 external reviewer score. Step 4, award amount determination. For each application, a selecting official, which is a member of the CDFI fund staff, conducts quality control to ensure that the evaluation conducted in Step 3 was in accordance with the evaluation criteria. The selecting official then determines an initial award amount based on the results of Step 3. The selecting official may adjust the award amount from the Step 3 recommendation if there are concerns about the applicant's ability to deploy the full recommended award amount within the period of performance. The CDFI fund will then make proportional adjustments on the initial award amount, if necessary, to ensure that no more than the total amount available for award is awarded. After these adjustments, award amounts will be final. For more information on the CDFI ERP application evaluation process, please see the NOFA.
The next section on our agenda, and the final section, is uses of award, reporting, and reminders. As a condition of their award, CDFI ERP recipients must meet certain PG&Ms, including, but not limited to, all CDFI ERP recipients must expend 60% of the award amount by the end of year 3 of the period of performance, 80% of the award amount by the end of the year 4 of the period of performance, and 100% of the award amount by the period of performance end date. Financial products and expended award funds used to satisfy the CDFI ERP performance goals and measures for reporting may not also be used to satisfy PG&Ms for the CDFI program and NACA program, the Small Dollar Loan Program, or the CDFI Rapid Response Program. PG&Ms. All CDFI ERP eligible activities must serve ERP eligible geographies except 10% of an award amount, which may be deployed outside of ERP eligible geographies to serve low or moderate income persons and businesses, including nonprofit organizations, disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic that are included in CDFI eligible markets. Additional PG&Ms for each recipient will be determined based on its proposed commitments relative to the CDFI ERP policy priorities in its application. Final PG&Ms will be set forth in the CDFI ERP Assistance Agreement. Reporting requirements. In the 5-year period of performance, which begins with the date of the award announcement and includes the recipient's 5 full consecutive fiscal years after the date of the award announcement. Annual reporting requirements include the transaction level report, or the TLR, the uses of award report, or the UAR, the performance progress report, the PPR, a financial statement audit report if applicable, and a single audit report if applicable. Reporting requirements may be added or modified to enable the Secretary of the Treasury to conduct a study of CDFI ERP impact. The CDFI fund will require recipients to collect and report data on the race and ethnicity of borrowers and/or beneficiaries of the program. Final requirements will be outlined in the assistance agreement.
Reminder of important deadlines. Last day to enter EIN and UEI numbers in AMIS is July 26, 2022, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, in Amos. Last day to submit SF-424, mandatory application for federal assistance, is July 26, 2022, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, and you will submit electronically via grants.gov. Last day to contact CDFI Fund with questions about CDFI ERP is August 19, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, via service request through Amos, which is preferred, email at erp@cdfi.treas.gov. Last day to contact CDFI Fund with questions about compliance or CDFI certification is August 19, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, via service request via Amos, which is preferred, email at ccme@cdfi.treas.gov, or phone 202-653-0423. The last day to contact Amos IT Help Desk regarding Amos technical problems only is August 23, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Service request via Amos is preferred. Email at amis@cdfi.treas.gov, or phone at 202-653-0422. Last day to submit CDFI ERP application is August 23, 2022, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time via Amos. Contact information for applicants, CDFI Equitable Recovery Program and application. The contact information is service request via Amos, which is preferred, or email at erp@cdfi.treas.gov. Office of Compliance Monitoring and Evaluation, OCME, via service request via Amos, which is preferred, or email at ccme@cdfi.treas.gov. Office of Certification Policy and Evaluation, OCPE. You can service request via Amos, or email at ccme@cdfi.treas.gov. Awards Management Information System, AMIS, service request via Amos, preferred. Email amis@cdfi.treas.gov. Grants.gov, email support@grants.gov. Phone number 1-800-518-4726. SAM.gov, visit www.fsdg0b. Phone 1-866-606-8220. Application materials. Additional information and all application materials for CDFI ERP can be found on the CDFI Fund's website, www.cdfifund.gov/ERP. Please note, check the CDFI Fund's website for any updates to application materials. Now we're entering our question and answer section. Thank you for participating in today's webinar.
At this time, we'll hand it over to Dan Aiello.
Thanks, Sylvia. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Aiello. I am the Senior Advisor to the Deputy Director for Policy and Programs at the CDFI Fund. I'll be handling the question and answer session best that I can. A couple of housekeeping messages. Please enter your questions in the chat feature If you, like me, maybe didn't have the chat up when you logged into WebEx, there is a button in the lower right-hand corner you can click. It says chat. You can open that. We've received a large number of questions. I can't say for certain that I will get to all of them. If I do not get to your question or my response to your question leaves you with more questions, please submit a service request via AMIS. Obviously, this is our second webinar. We got a huge number of service requests and questions in the last webinar. We're a little behind on working through them, so please be patient with us. We want to make sure we get you accurate information. So we are starting to make better progress on that. Couple other things. So we plan as part of this program to release a supplemental FAQ, hopefully later this month. Take a little bit of time after this webinar to put together and be vetted appropriately for release. There are some questions which we've got that I may need to defer to a supplemental FAQ, and they'll be answered at a later date. I will try as much as I can to answer the questions we've received in the best way and the clearest way I can at this time. I think that's all. I'm just going to start reading. All right, so the first question we got in the chat was when entering total assets in the organizational profile in AMIS, what time period would you want us to use? Most folks are 12/31 FIE. Do you want 12/31/2020 or 12/31/2021? We prefer the most recent assets as of the conclusion of the most recent historic fiscal year. So if you had a 12/31 FIE, then that would be 2021. You can also look in the NOFA and then the application have like a list of what the most recent historic fiscal year is. Flow. In filling out the applicant financial or the applicant eligibility data table, it asks for us to report on the dollar amount and number of on-balance sheet financial products. Our question is whether or not this would include loan purchases or would be limited to our own originations. So financial products is defined in the CDFI ERP NOFA, which I encourage you all to read and print out, you know, and hang on your wall or somewhere where it's easy to reference. And so it's defined in Table 2, and that definition includes loan purchases, but only the purchase of loan originated by certified CDFIs. So you can include loan purchases from certified CDFIs in your on-balance sheet financial products. All right, so I got a question as to how do we calculate 30% of our average annual financial products. I also got a question similar to that, basically asking, are there editable templates for the tables in AMIS to fill in? Yes, so we do have on our website, cdfifund.com/ERP, there are templates you can use to calculate the 30% and to complete a certain number of tables to prep your data for entry into AMIS. You are not going to submit these tables. There's nowhere to submit them. If you submit them, we will not look at them, but they are there for your benefit, and they'll do the math for you prior to you entering data into AMIS. Hang on. If an organization has, all right, I continue to get new questions in the Q&A. So please don't put questions in the Q&A. I know that's what we did the last webinar, but it turns out it's really hard to get questions out of the Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat. Okay. If an organization has less than 5-year lending history, will their maximum award be calculated on their average or their 5-year average? In other words, if they have 4 years of lending track record will the total lending be divided by 4 or 5? I am going to have to ask one of my team members for help on that question. I believe Amos does the division by 5, but I'll have someone let me know if it's wrong and come back to that. But I believe, regardless of how many years of lending history you have, there's a way in the system it calculates your max award, and it's going to divide the total amount of volume you have over a 5-year period by 5, and then multiply it by 3, and that's how you'll get it. I believe it's how Amos works. Got a question about forgivable loans. Are they interpreted as grants for this program? We are working on an answer to that for the supplemental FAQ. We want to make sure we're consistent with how certification and CDFI program treat forgivable loans. And we're still trying to make sure that we have the right information. I will say, because we got this last week, if you decide wherever you are entering forgivable loans, don't enter them twice. Someone asked if they could enter the amount of the loan when it's originated and then the amount of the loan forgiven as a grant when it's forgiven. No, don't do that. You're only going to enter that data once. All right. Will this webinar be made available on the CDFI Fund website? The answer to that question is yes. Lines of business. All right, that was a private question. All right. Can you please provide more detail on this restriction? CDFI Fund ERP awards may not be used to support the activities of or otherwise pass through, transferred, or co-awarded to third-party entities, whether affiliates, subsidiaries, or others, unless done pursuant to a merger or acquisition or similar transaction without the CDFI Fund prior written consent. Does this mean we can only deploy funds directly to clients for their own use and they cannot re-grant or redeploy those funds themselves? No, that's not precisely what that means. So basically what that language attempts to articulate, and it will be a condition of the agreement, is that you can't pass through the grant to another entity for the purposes of carrying out the award activities. So you couldn't say, the simplest example, so if you're a CDFI who's an intermediary who lends and invests to other CDFIs, so the activity you'd be applying for funds for would be to make loans or investments in other CDFIs. So you can do that because that's your use of the award. But what you couldn't do is just transfer your award to another CDFI to then make loans and investments into CDFIs on your behalf. You can't transfer your grant to another entity for the purposes of administering the award on your behalf. However, given that we are doing lending activity or granting, it's possible that you can still achieve the purposes of the program and not get tied up in that restriction. If you have a specific scenario you want to run by us, I do encourage you to contact us via service request because a lot of this kind of depends on specifics. If you have a specific scenario that you want to run by us, please let us know. But in general, that language is not meant to restrict your ability to kind of conduct normal business. So I got a question for an entity with a 3/31 fiscal year end whose audit will be done before the application due date, but it is not completed before the ERP opened. Are they able to select either fiscal year as their historic fiscal year? So the answer to that question, I believe, is, sorry, I'm looking in my materials. The answer to that question would be yes. They can select either fiscal year. If your audit will be done before the application is due, you can use that. Okay. Continuing along. I have the CDFI fund definition of affiliate. Does an applicant need to formally document with the CDFI fund if we deem ourselves not to be an affiliate with another applicant? Is there a CDFI loan fund and a CDFI? Then there's a bunch of specifics about the structure. So we don't want to run into a situation where we deem ourselves not to be an affiliate and we both apply, but where the CDFI fund through its own means says we are affiliates. So if you have a specific structure you want to run by us, you can do that in advance. You know, it will probably take us a little time to analyze it. There is a specific legal definition of the term affiliate. So what I suspect are, and we'll consult with our counsel's office, what I suspect we're going to want is some sort of opinion from your counsel or a counsel saying that you're not affiliated, potentially. It could be that the fact pattern makes clear that you're not affiliated without the necessity of a legal opinion. But that's the route we could go to formalize it. But I'd encourage you to reach out specifically via service request, kind of laying out, you know, your relationship to the other entity and why it doesn't meet the legal definition of affiliate that's outlined in ERP program. For those of you wondering what the legal definition of affiliate is for the ERP program, there is a glossary on our website. And you can reference that glossary. Okay. All right. For the ERP eligibility calculation, should purchase loans be included? Renewed loans for lines of credit, should the max line amount be used? I already answered the purchase loan credit. Renewed loans and lines of credit, I think we'll need to research and see how they're treated. So if you want to submit a service request on that, we'll try to run that by. We had a question on 11F. Since March 2020, there's a reference in March 2020 that include March of 2020 or start with April 2020. So let me pull up the application and look how that question is worded. F. All right. So the question is, since March 2020, in response, expand it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's since March 2020. That's fine. It can include March 2020 if you started expanding in response to COVID early in March. Yeah. No issue with it including March 2020. All right, got a question. For compliance requirements to track race and ethnicity, would there be a consideration for regulated entities who are legally not allowed to track this data? So the answer to that question is the legislation that created the CDFI ERP program waived the Equal Opportunity Credit Act to allow for reporting of race and ethnicity data on these funds. So regulated institutions will not be exempt because they are legally allowed under these funds to collect that data. So it will be a requirement. We are communicating with the applicable regulatory authorities to make sure that they're aware of this and what that all means. You know, that process takes time, but folks should anticipate that that will be a requirement regardless of whether they're regulated or not. All right, I'm going to go to a couple other questions I got in the Q&A for there's a question about merging with another CDFI after the application deadline. If whoever is asking that question could just submit a service request, we'll probably need to get into specifics. Anything else? How do you prove you've met the requirement to deploy 90% of the funds in an ERP-eligible geography? So we are going to work on a supplemental FAQ to that. That is still working because we need to flesh out a few things, and that will be published in the supplemental FAQ, exactly how that 90% test will be measured. Since we've gotten this question before, we don't intend that there's some way to geographically allocate funds that are used for operational expenses. So that test is probably just going to be applied to funds not used for operational expenses. And we're working out guidance for how it would be used in more depth on different eligible activities. Another question. If an applicant is allocated all of its ERP grant award to capital, would it still need to track race and ethnicity? I assume this is capital reserves. If so, what loans need to be tracked? Are all loans during the reporting period? So we are also working on supplemental guidance that will be in the supplemental FAQ that would cover tracking responsibilities related to development services, financial services, capital reserves, and loan loss reserves, so non-financial product uses. We plan on providing more information on that, but there will still be some tracking requirements for those uses. All right, kind of switching back and forth. All right, so we got one. If you are selected to receive an award, can you select a lesser amount than what is awarded? Yes, you can request a lesser amount than what is awarded. I will tell you our plan is to award all of these funds in this round, if at all possible. It would create some challenges for us as an organization for you to decrease your award amount after it's awarded, because we need to figure out how to obligate all of the funds. But we can manage that and mitigate that. But I say that to say, please don't go around thinking, oh, we're going to ask for way more than we think we want, and if we get that much, then we'll just ask for less, because that will create significant logistical headaches. Please ask for the amount you think you will need. Thanks. All right. Can you please review the guidance regarding non-duplicative deployment for row 9 in Table B? For example, if the applicant made a loan to a minority individual who arrives in a majority minority census tract, that loan would be reported separately in row 2 and row 8. If a loan has already been reported in one of the rows, should it be excluded from row 9 entirely? So for Table B, we're looking for you to provide the relevant data for each of the individual categories. However, we recognize that there can be the same loan might be reported in more than one category, and that's okay. So, but in the duplicative total, I'm asking you to kind of net out the double reported loan, non-duplicative total. So it doesn't need to be excluded from row 9 entirely. Just want to net out the times it may have appeared more than once. So, for example, if you made a loan to a minority individual who resides in a persistent poverty county, that loan may be reported twice. Sorry, that's the wrong table. If you make a loan to an minority individual who resides in a majority minority census tract, that loan would be reported in 2 different rows in the table. So when we figure it out, we just want you to net out when it's been double reported. Okay, continuing on. Will PG&Ms for each policy priority be available prior to the submission deadline? I'm not totally sure I understand this question. The PG&Ms are going to be basically your commitment to the policy priority as articulated in question 12. So, if you commit to use a certain percentage, that would be your PG&M. If you commit to a certain multiplier, that would be your PG&M. So it's pretty straightforward. These slides will be available after the webinar. For question 9C, does the fund expect that community engagement will be completed prior to the submission of its ERP application? Yes. I mean, ideally, we would like to see some community engagement around how you would use the ERP fund. If you have additional plans for community engagement, post-award, I think there are places in the application where you can outline that, and you can certainly discuss that. But we do want to know, the extent to which you've been able to get some feedback on your strategy that you're articulating in the application. Can you please go over the scoring criteria again? What will help an application score high and receive a larger award? So the scoring criteria is outlined in some detail in Section 5 of the NOFA, so I encourage you to review it. We don't really have a lot of additional information for that. The scoring for this program kind of will impact the size of the award. In general, if you read Section 5, you'll see that we note that in most cases, only if groups are deemed to kind of have significant issues related to their ability to manage an award or feasibility or, addressing the goals of the program, would they be recommended for no award. So the evaluation will primarily determine the size of the award. But again, please review Section 5 in detail. Section 5, that's kind of our official guidance on award scoring. It's kind of long, but you can read it. It should be anything in Section 5 in the NOFA that conflicts with anything I may have said. The NOFA is going to govern. There's a question about historical PPP activities when determining a CDFI's eligibility. So we already have a FAQ in our ERP FAQ document about when to include PPP. So please review the ERP document that's currently available, the current FAQ. So there's a question about, would a direct expense of a new TA staff person be counted against the maximum direct operating amount, the maximum development financial services amount, or against both of those? We're going to need to do a little research on that to determine how that's treated in other CDFI programs. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, and I did some quick poking around, didn't see anything. So, but if you submit a service request on that, I should be able to get a response to you by next week. How would you suggest handling the application questions, data requests around annual gross revenue of small businesses served if we don't track that data historically? Is there an acceptable proxy data point to submit? So in general, if you're not currently tracking data, be it race or ethnicity in terms of your past loans or any other data point that makes it hard for you to answer some of the backwards-looking questions. In general, we're not encouraging proxy data, so you just note that you don't have that data available unless you have some way of kind of getting it from your existing loan files. Are there any parameters around giving grants, i.e. the size of the grants given? No, there aren't any parameters around giving grants. In terms of the size, in general, grants need to be used for the purposes outlined in the NOFA. As I discussed earlier, you can't sub-grant the award to another organization. So you couldn't, as a CDFI, get an organization, get a ERP grant and then grant it out to another CDFI to do your ERP eligible activities. like if your performance goal was lending in persistent poverty counties, you couldn't then grant your grant to another CDFI to do the lending in persistent poverty counties on your behalf, because that would create a subrecipient relationship, and that's not allowed. If a CDFI is awarded funds, can it deploy in the form of a part loan, part grant products? Yes, that's fine. If we use this money for grant dollars, will there be a lending requirement, or will we only be required to report on the grants? So you could use all of your award to make grants. And you'd be required to report on grant transactions as a result of that. We're still working on some of the details on reporting, but there is not a lending requirement. Yes, Marcia?
I just want to interject one additional part to that answer on the grants. You do have a requirement to be a financing entity to maintain your certification. So when people are asking about the size of the grant amounts and those types of things, you need to be aware that there's no exemption for your requirement to remain a financing entity, and certification has very specific rules about this, and we're going to include some FAQs about that and the supplemental FAQs that you just mentioned, because of these types of questions where people are trying to gauge, the amounts and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Marcia. That's an important clarification. So you do need to be mindful if you want to make grants, and that's not something historic, or you're really looking to increase your volume, then it doesn't impact your CDFI certification. What application questions are scored? All of the questions that are not in the executive summary section are scored. Or not executive summary section, I apologize. The first section of the application, which I believe is called the applicant information section, though I will confirm. Yes, so organizational and applicant information. So that's questions 1 through 6. Questions 1 through 6 are not scored. The other questions are scored. We noticed that the eligible geographies are based on the 2010 census tract and not the 2020 census tract. Is this intentional? And will we be reporting against the 2010 tracts moving forward, or the 2020 tracts? So without getting too much into the weeds, they are based on the 2010 tracts because the relevant data from the Census Bureau was not available when we were calculating ERP eligible geographies for this program. If y'all are familiar, you'll note that we have not moved in any of our other programs to 2020 tracks yet. So you will be reporting against the 2010 tracks because that is the data that's available at the time of application. If we want to use the money to support minority developers, would that be in the same category as supporting a minority small businesses? That would depend on the size of the developer. But yes, developers are businesses. All right. Will applications that contain historic lending based on race and ethnicity be scored higher than those who only can track it based on geography, majority minority census tracts? No. What we're basically interested in doing is seeing what people are doing, and what they have experience with, so we can compare it to their projections. But it's not, there would be no preference in scoring between those two items. Either tracking is fine. Okay. I don't have any more questions in the chat. All right, let me see if there are any in the Q&A. hold on. For ERP eligible, I already answered that. Sorry, I have like 2 more minutes, so I'm just seeing if there's anything else I can say that's useful. I'll take that one. Does the FY 2021 audit have to be published prior to the NOFA date? No. If your FY 2021 audit is, ready, just so long as it's ready before the date that it's submitted and you can attach it, that's fine. We're probably going to issue some clarifications on audits because we've gotten a number of questions about the timing of audits. So look for those. This question as to whether a loan can be counted for both ERP and BEA. I'm going to defer to BEA's policy governing that. But I'll see if we need to have a specific policy. All right. All right, we got a question. Our UEI number is showing in the organizational detail page outside of the application, but within the application, in the UEI box, our DUNS number is showing instead of the new UEI. Is this going to be a problem? Yes, that's not the way the application should be functioning. Please submit a service request so we can get that fixed. The rest, everyone else listening, please check and see if that you're having that issue as well, if it's systemic, because we can fix that. Some CDFIs have had struggles in the past couple of years in terms of getting CDFI funds deployed due to COVID-related challenges. Will this hurt their chances for this new grant? Not necessarily. There is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, most of the scoring is going to be based on determining how big an award folks will get. We don't want to overburden folks with capital. This program does have a longer period of performance of 5 years in either FA or RRP, so that is to give people a little more runway to deploy capital. I think we're trying to balance in this program getting resources to organizations that have traditionally maybe not had the same level of access to them and may need time to scale up their capacity to deploy those resources with making sure that the funds get deployed to communities in a relatively timely manner.
I would just add that if you're not compliant with your existing agreements, that would impact your chances. But in terms of if you requested an amendment to your existing awards because you were experiencing trouble, then you're compliant. I think that would be my bright line there.
Yeah, if you are not compliant, certainly we're going to look at compliance status and things of that nature. Can you consider another webinar that is just a Q&A session? That is something we're discussing. We are working on some updates to the program based on initial feedback we've gotten in terms of, as I mentioned, providing some clarifications on audits, potentially doing some other things and providing a supplemental FAQ. So when we have news on that, we will issue a release through our website. So make sure you're on our Gov delivery list. Is there a limit on the amount of funds that can be attributed to a loan loss reserve? No, there is not a limit on the amount of funds that can be attributed to a loan loss reserve. I will say, as part of your application, you do want to justify your need for that level of a loan loss reserve relative to the level of lending it will support. We can make adjustments kind of based on what we think is reasonable, and so you couldn't just. This is true of any use. You can't just ask for some amount of money and not really explain how you got to that amount of money. But there's not a limit in the amount you can attribute to loan loss reserves. And then will there be a Q&A webinar session later in the application period, as there often is for the FA program? I think I addressed this. That's definitely something we're looking at. What information is needed to prove that an area is disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? So we've defined 2 areas as being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Well, not 2 areas, many areas. So we have a list of census tracts on our website. You go to cdfi.erp.gov. This is census tracts that we deem to have been heavily impacted by COVID based on a number of factors, including their existing kind of income makeup prior to COVID, during COVID. Also, in addition to these census tracts, all native areas, as defined, are considered ERP eligible geographies. So that's the universe we're talking about. If you go to SIMS, which is our mapping system, go to our website, cdfifund.gov, go to Tools and Resources, you click on the SIMS mapping tool, and then click on Public, and it will take you to ERP. And so under Layers, you'll see both ERP eligible census tracts and native areas. So those are the areas that are considered eligible geographies for this program. Native areas, as those of you who are familiar with it know, do not really correspond with census tract boundaries, so we had to separately make those areas eligible because it was quite problematic to attempt to combine them with census tracts. Okay. All right, I think that's about it. If there are any questions that have not been answered, please feel free to submit a service request. We appreciate your interest in the program. We appreciate the work you're putting into it. I know this is a new program, and you all have a lot of questions, and there are a lot of good questions. And we are working diligently to get you information as soon as we can. We've gotten some questions about the timeline for the updated FAQ. I don't have a specific timeline, but I hope it will be sometime this month. I mean, it should be sometime this month. So we're going to work on that as quickly as we can. Now that we're done with the webinar, we're compiling our list. We'll draft our responses. We need to vet those, and then we'll be ready for release. So thank you again all for participating. I appreciate your interest in it. The webinar should be posted online in the next couple of days.
Right. Very good. Yeah. And I echo the thanks for joining us today. Just as a reminder, please check the website to access the slide presentation and the recording of the webinar. And we look forward to receiving and dealing with all of your questions and hoping to answer them clearly so that you can submit your applications.
Thank you.
Concludes today's call. All participants may disconnect at this time. Thank you for joining.